Hello, and welcome to the allure of fashion and the intrigue of great books. Get ready for a fun style discussion while we cozy up to mystery. I'm your host, Wendy Kendall. I'm a mystery and romance author who loves fashion, and I have big news. My sixth book, An In Pursuit Mystery with Katherine Watson, will be available in December. Don't shoot the messenger bag. Ah, I can't wait for you to read it. I'm thrilled with the mystery, the story, and fashion highlights. So much fun to write. It's where fashion sense meets criminal intent. Between now and year end, I hope you'll enjoy my other books available at Amazon and other online sites. And you can find out more on my website, wendywritesbooks.com. Then in December, watch for my new book release. Don't shoot the messenger bag. A little preview of the cover. My guest for today's podcast episode is Ellen Byron, the USA Today best-selling award-winning author of the Vintage Cookbook Mysteries, Cajun Country Mysteries, Golden Motel Mystery Series, and Catering Hall Mysteries. This last is written under the pen name Maria DeRico. Her mysteries have won multiple Agatha Awards for Best Contemporary Novel and Lefty Awards for Best Humorous Mystery. Bayou Book Thief, her first vintage cookbook mystery, was also nominated for an Anthony Award. Her Golden Motel Mystery series is inspired by her former career as a sitcom writer. Ellen's TV credits include Wings, Just Shoot Me, and Fairly Odd Parents. She's written over 200 magazine articles. Her published plays include the award-winning Graceland and Asleep on the Wind. She's a native New Yorker who lives in Los Angeles and attributes her fascination with Louisiana to her college years at New Orleans Tulane University. And yet one more claim to fame, she also worked as a cater waiter for Martha Stewart. Wow. Welcome, Ellen Byron, in
Thank you.
pursuit.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Ellen, your Cajun Country Mysteries are a cozy mystery series set in the heart of Louisiana,
Mhm.
brimming with Southern charm, humor, and suspense. Maggie Crozat returns home to help her family with the B&B, only to find herself constantly entangled in local murders. Each book features a new mystery tied to regional traditions, festivals, or culinary culture. Can you tell us a little about Maggie and this series?
Well, Maggie always felt a little uncomfortable when she actually was growing up in this little village of Pelican, Louisiana, where her family's dates back to practically the beginning of they're kind of like local royalty, even though they don't act like it, and she never felt like that. She was always the artsy fartsy girl because she was much more into the arts, and so she went to New York and she opened a gallery with her then boyfriend, and she finally gave him 6 months to either commit or to end the relationship. And in those 6 months, he made her marry someone else. So she's
Oh,
now like given up on New York and come back home, kind of licking her wounds. And in the beginning of the series, she's still feels like a fish out of water, even though she grew up there. But then as time goes on and the series goes on, she really realizes it's where she's meant to be.
that's beautiful. Wow. Your Cajun country mysteries are steeped in Louisiana culture. How did your personal connection to the region help shape the series? And what do you think makes the setting so ripe for mystery?
Well, Louisiana and well, New Orleans in particular proudly considers itself the most haunted city in America, and I think Louisiana also often lays claim to the most haunted state. And even though I don't write paranormal, I think there's an undercurrent to the. It's a very unique place, especially Cajun country, where people have their own language, their own food, their own music, and it's like a culture within a culture. And I really connected to that. I realized one of the reasons I connected to that was that my mother was Italian and she came to America when she was about 3. And my whole childhood, we had relatives, coming over from Italy. But, when there were family gatherings, Italian was the primary language, not English. And the food was all homemade Italian food. And so I kind of grew up on one side of my family with a culture within a culture. So I think that's why I identified with and really steep myself in the Cajun culture because I loved that, it really predates the American Revolution because the Acadians started coming over from Canada when they were kicked out by the British in like 1765 or 6. And then of course also the Spanish were there and the German coast dates back when this guy came and promised people all this land and then basically dumped them at the edge of the river and disappeared. That dates back to the early 1700s, like 1718 or 13, I don't remember which. So the state is really a very melting pot for all different cultures, and of course, the African culture, the enslaved, the free people of color, the influence they had on the state is immense and really very important.
So much history there.
Yes,
Wow. Well, your Vintage Cookbook Mysteries series is set in New Orleans,
yes,
centered around the Bon Vieil Culinary House Museum.
yeah.
It's a historic mansion turned foodie destination, and your protagonist, Ricky, is a 28-year-old widow relocating from Los Angeles, and she's working in the kitchenware shop inside the museum, but she has stumbled across some murder as well. This series blends nostalgia with modern twists and the culture of New Orleans. How do you use fashion to enhance that mix?
Well, first, let me say that she doesn't work. She actually owns and operates with paying a percentage to the store. Miss V's vintage cookbook and kitchenware shop. It's the gift shop within this culinary house museum. That's a destination honoring one of the great restaurateurs of New Orleans. So it's a modern day destination honoring this woman from the past. And in terms of fashion, I think it's to define certain characters. Like Ricky, when she gets there, she's dressing much more like, she brings a little of California with her, a little more bohemian, a little looser, a little, more flowing and, but also kind of athleisure to some extent. And then as she's there, she actually starts to lean more into vintage dressing, and because it really aligns with her shop. I mean, she starts to dress more like in clothes that, she buys at resale shops and like from the 60s and the 50s um and then also it also defines characters like the woman who runs and inherited the Bonvie Culinary House Museum was the niece of Genevieve Charbonnet, Miss V, whose home it was and who was the restaurateur, and Eugenia, and she's in her mid to late 60s, and but she's a New Orleans very one of those social women who dresses in very specific like suit every not a hair is out of place and everything is particularly like Chanel type suits that are timeless. She's a timeless dresser and very elegant, and so there's a big contrast there. And then there's one of Ricky's best friends, Azella, who's she's an artist. She also runs the food, the little cafe at the Culinary House Museum, and she uses herself as a palette. Like because she's an artist, she's always painting images onto her face or onto her hands or her arms, and that's kind of her own kind of fashion statement is through the images she creates on herself.
So you really can use fashion to sort of distinguish and reveal character.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow, that's really fascinating. And you've written multiple series with strong female leads.
Yes.
What's your process for developing a protagonist who can carry a multi-book story arc while still evolving and surprising readers?
Well, I think you want a protagonist who has a very strong drive. It has to have a very, she's um every one of my characters, I start out with what do they want? What is their strong drive? And in Cajun Country Mysteries, it was to help her family and to, help out in the family business. And she was, had one foot in and one foot out in the beginning, Maggie in that series. But, she was very committed to, to supporting her family because they supported her through a hard time, the breakup of her relationship. In the Catering Hall Mysteries, Mia, the character there, her father is tasked with running this catering hall as a legitimate business for the mob family, where he's been a lieutenant for years. And so she is determined to make sure he stays straight and runs it legitimately and doesn't get sucked back into illegal activity. So she's a very strong drive for that. Vintage Cookbook, Ricky is driven to redefine and recreate her life. She was estranged from her husband, but then he was this, YouTuber who did a stupid stunt and died. And so suddenly she's a widow, but she was already estranged from him. She has a lot of guilt from that. The boss she was working for turned out to be like a Bernie Madoff type scammer. She was in charge of his first edition collection, but now there's a taint on her. So she's starting over and she is driven to be successful in her new life. And in the Golden Motel Mysteries, the protagonist, Dee, is a former sitcom writer like me and who impulsively buys this motel because she's burned out on her career and she has a drive to make a huge success, to make a success of it. Otherwise, she's, sunk her future and her life savings into a failure, and that can't happen. So I think, as long as each protagonist has a strong drive, an overriding drive, it will, prompt them to do things like investigate murders that might affect their livelihoods or their future when, amateur sleuths generally don't get involved that way. And also putting their skills to use in that way, because each of these women has a skill set that actually applies in some way to solving mysteries and murders and uncovering the suspects.
I'm thinking that writing sitcoms and for film and television and writing books is very different process. Can you highlight a little bit what you like
Well,
about each?
it's different in terms of you're writing prose, not dialogue. Oh, there's a lot of dialogue, but when you think about it, creating the premise is very similar. And I think the reason I come to this, I create the premises for the proposals for my book series very similarly to how I and my former writing partner created pilots. We had to pitch pilots. And so you need to know what the drive was, who the characters were, what the premise was, and what episode 5 might be. You had to look down the road to see how that it had legs, that that the series would have legs and wouldn't just like, the premise was something that would just suddenly peter out. So I think I bring that to creating the premises for my mysteries. So I actually think there's actually more similarity than differences. And so at least for me, I can only speak for
Mhm.
myself,
Oh,
creating strong, unique characters who have a drive and in a setting. And it's like, a case of the week, you can say it, like a story of the week, which is a story of the book, but then the ongoing arc of relationships.
what a great way to put it. Well, I have to say that your connection with New Orleans got me investigating a little bit about New Orleans fashion, and I uncovered New Orleans Fashion Week. So I wanted to say a little bit about that. The New Orleans Fashion Week has caught the attention of national, regional, and local media as the foremost platform for Gulf Coast fashion, and it comes up each September.
Hmm.
Recognizing the common thread between designers and boutiques, New Orleans Fashion Week is the catalyst and driving force that unites fashion professionals in a series of high-end runway shows, presentations, pop-up boutiques, networking opportunities, and social experiences. Fashion has quickly become an important contributor to the New Orleans culture and is celebrated in conjunction with the city's legendary cuisine, music, art, and film. Over 50 runway shows during the 5-day event serve as a platform for Southern designers, makeup artists, hairstylists, and models to bring a new level of creative consciousness to the regional industry. New Orleans Fashion Week's commitment to all members of the fashion industry is vibrant and unwavering and continues to produce and support fashion events throughout the year. Tracy Dundas is always looking ahead, and she is the founder and creative director of New Orleans Fashion Week. Although the inaugural event was in 2011, Tracy had the idea first after Hurricane Katrina in 2005. As she tells it, she was trying to figure out what the next chapter of her career would look like. Retail had returned to the city of New Orleans, but fashion had not. So while trying to figure out how to become an intern with a major brand in New York City, she noted regional fashion weeks were starting to happen. She put a plan together and conducted research, visiting various fashion weeks in different parts of the country, from Portland, Oregon to Dallas, Texas, and Charleston, South Carolina. The rest is New Orleans Fashion Week history. Tracy has been a fashion pioneer since receiving her apparel design fashion merchandising degree from the University of Southwestern Louisiana. She owned and operated one of the largest modeling agencies in Louisiana. And when not producing the Fashion Week, Tracy works as a freelance stylist, contributing fashion editor to several fashion publications, and as a designer costumer for film, TV, and commercial productions. As a fashion note, she loves the color black in her wardrobe, wearing it even in the heat of the summer because it's so versatile and you can change it so effortlessly. She's all about a monochrome look and minimalism. She's also an earrings gal. She says adding special touches like earrings flatter the face. But she likes to remind people too that your best accessory, honestly, is your smile. Ellen, you also write under the name Maria Di Rico for the Catering Hall Mysteries.
Yes.
How do you shift gears between series, and what's the biggest challenge in juggling multiple fictional worlds?
Well, basically, I finish one book and I don't do them at the same time. I finish the draft of one for one series and then I go on to the other. And so I have a clean slate. Otherwise, it would just be way too confusing. The biggest challenge is making sure I don't name all my characters names that begin with the same letter, which I did with the three of them. They there's Maggie and Mia, and then Ricky's full name is Miracle. So I made sure that in Golden Motel, the D's name was not an M name, which is odd because I don't know anyone with M names. So I just very clearly, in my head, I see how my protagonists are similar, but I also see how they're different. And so I lean into the differences to make sure that I'm on track with the correct protagonist. And if when I'm in that zone, I will be able to tell, if something won't feel right if it's not designed for the voice of that character.
In your Golden Motel Mysteries series, you take your readers out in the woods in the scenic village of Found Gold, California. Your character, Dee Stern, has plans for a peaceful, family-friendly retreat, and her plans are constantly disrupted by murder, mayhem, and viral chaos. It's sort of a t-shirt and jeans series, but there are locals who work in Gold's Gone, and they dress in period costumes.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little about plotting for this unique and humorous series?
Well, that was actually inspired by a real location, Columbia State Historic Park, which is in Gold Rush Country, the southern end of Gold Rush Country in California. And when it's in season, like through from June through into October or whenever, and whenever everything is open, they dress like that. They dress in period costume. So, in terms of plotting for it, I mean, it's really not any different than plotting for any of my series. I'm an outliner, so I have an idea of a story and then I start to expand it and I just keep expanding and asking what happens next and making sure every potential chapter ends on an uh-oh. And it's fun to be, putting people in bonnets and long skirts, but have them be very, modern underneath. Like there's a character, Verity, who kind of rules the town, who dresses like she's, in Little House on the Prairie, but she also loves having manicures, so she'll have this like ridiculously long nails with little, wagon wheels or bonnets on them as, her ode to the past. But, and one of them actually ends up being a clue in one of the books.
I
Excuse
love
me.
that. I love that. That is very clever.
Mm, thank you.
Ellen, thank you so much for sharing this fashion and fiction journey with us. What's coming up next for your readers to look forward to?
Well, Solid Gold Murder, the second Golden Motel mystery, just came out in July, and that focuses on the gold rush, second gold rush in 2023, when we had heavy rains in California and they exposed gold that no one had even knew still existed. And it's about a lot of my books are how the past informs the present because it brings up centuries old grudges of miners family had, and then in the present, there's the threat of AI again, that may ruin someone's life. And then Crescent City Christmas Chaos will actually comes out officially on Tuesday, and that is a Christmas themed Christmas in New Orleans, where it
Ah,
brings both, it brings joy and not so joyous events that could threaten Ricky's loved ones. So
intriguing.
yes, and all in the backdrop of Christmas in New Orleans.
Oh, fantastic. Great. Lots to look forward to. Well, thank you, Ellen Byron. Listeners, you can access Ellen Byron's website at ellenbyron.com to see all her books, interesting blog, and sign up for her fun newsletter and more.
Yes.
Her website address is also in our YouTube description, so you can see it down below. And you're invited to my website, wendywritesbooks.com, to see my books, blog, podcasts, explore more on fashion and fiction, and keep up on all my news, including exclusive clues about my new book coming in December. Don't shoot the messenger bag. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And join me next time for the allure of fashion and the intrigue of great books.